Hello, my holy sisters and brothers. Great to be learning with you on a Thursday. Special time. Happy Thanksgiving. Let's light up the darkness. Who's in the house on a Thursday, Yom HaMishi? Guy in Ohio, Yosef in Englewood, New Jersey, Joe in the Inland Empire, Yosef in Nevada, Bella in Florida, Yehudit, wishing everyone a happy Thanksgiving, Melissa in Great Neck, Lorraine in Texas, Marjorie in Georgia, Ella in Southern California, Hoidu leHashem ki tov, ki li'olam chazdo, give thanks to the Lord, for the Lord is good, his kindnesses endure forever. The opening music is always from a Hallel at our shul, featuring Moshe Storch leading us. And one of those lines that we sing several times in Hallel is that, Hoidu leHashem ki tov, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. Ki li'olam chazdo, his kindness endures forever. Give thanks. Hoidu. The word hoidu also means turkey. How about that? It really is a coincidence, though I don't believe in accidents. You know me. But it's very interesting how it was developed. Europeans didn't encounter the turkey until they went to the New World, which they thought, Christopher Columbus thought he was finding a route to India, right? That's why they were called the Indies, the West Indies. And so the word that was shortened to hoidu, turkey, was Tarnagal hoidu, so a rooster from India. So hoidu, and we actually see this in the book of Esther, also refers to India. Perhaps has something to do, this is just people speculating, but when Avraham, after Ishmael is his oldest son, then Yitzchak, and then later it says he marries this woman Keturah, and the Midrash says that was also Hagar, the mother of Ishmael, had a bunch of children, and then he sent them east with gifts. So there is some speculation that some of the Abrahamic tradition reached India, but at any rate, hoidu also means India, it means thanks, and it means turkey. So how about that? Okay. Also, Karen in Northern California. Okay, let's learn. I'm going to keep it efficient today because people want to get on with their holiday, their federal holiday, a day of giving thanks. I mean, what could be better? What could be more Jewish than to give thanks? And we should be giving thanks every day. And it's almost overkill in the sense that, if you'd really take Shabbos seriously, so it's like a whole Thanksgiving dinner every Friday night. And thank God for the opportunity to do that. Okay, we are continuing our discussion of Mishna number 8 here in chapter 9 of Tractate Bava Basra, 23rd volume of the Talmud. Our daf today is page 155. We're picking it up a couple paragraphs from the top on 155a with a new subject. It was stated that there was a dispute with regard to the following matter. From when, meaning from what age, can a minor sell the property that he inherited from his father, right? His father died, he inherited property. From what age can he sell it? It's a strange question. First of all, a minor cannot sell property, but an adult can. And in Judaism, according to Torah law, when does a boy become a man? When he's 13. So if he inherits property, can he sell it when he's 13? No, he cannot, because even though he has the obligations of a man, in terms of he's obligated and things like wrapping tefillin, praying 3 times a day, etc., which he should have been training to do before he turned 13, but then he's obligated when he turns 13. Nevertheless, Jewish law is cognizant that a 13-year-old is not mature enough to do certain things, including sell property that he inherited from his father, right? We're talking about ancestral land holdings. So a young boy, a teenage boy, might be attracted to get some money and give up something so much more important because he doesn't really understand its value. And that's why they set a higher age for that. And there's a dispute. What is that higher age? Rava says that Rav Nachman says from the time he is 18, he can sell land that he inherited. And Rav Huna Bar Chanana says that Rav Nachman says, so 2 different reports of what Rav Nachman said. Rav Hana Bar Chanana says that Rav Nachman says from the time he is 20 years old. So he's not 18, but rather 20. And the Gemara notes, and this statement of Rava was not stated explicitly, Rava saying in the name of Rav Nachman that 18 is the age from when a boy can sell land he inherited from his father. But this statement of Rava was not stated explicitly. Rather, it was stated by inference. So what was the inference? How can we infer that Rava says that Rav Nachman holds that a boy can sell land that he inherited from when he's 18? Well, there was an incident that we're going to talk about. We've already heard about this incident. Now we're going to go a little more detail. Rabbi Zera raises an objection from the aforementioned Baraisa. There was an incident in Bnei Barak involving one who sold some of his father's property, which he had inherited, and he died. Okay, so how old was he? Okay, so the question, basically, it's either 18 or 20, and we're going to derive from this story. It's definitely not 13. So the point is that this young man, inherited property from his father, and he sold it. Now, if he sold it before he reached this statutory age when his sale becomes a valid sale, then the buyers are going to be out of luck because he wasn't allowed to sell it. Right, so his heirs, right? Maybe probably he doesn't have children of his own yet, but he has brothers. There's going to be other family members who can inherit, and they're going to say, "Hey, this guy who inherited land from his father, he was too young to sell it." And the people who purchased the land from this young man are going to say, "What are you talking about? He was 18 or he was 20, whatever the ruling is. He was old enough." And so this sale is a valid sale. That's the crux of this dispute. So again, there was an incident in Bnei Barak involving one who sold some of his father's property, which he had inherited, and he died. And the members of his family, right, the heirs, came and contested the sale, saying he was a minor at the time that he died. So he couldn't have sold this property. He wasn't old enough, at least a minor with respect to selling land inherited from your father. And therefore the sale was not valid. And they came and asked Rabbi Akiva, what is the halacha? What is the law? Is it permitted to exhume the corpse in order to examine it and ascertain whether or not the heir was a minor at the time of his death? Now, this is already a little bit confusing. What are you going to discover when you exhume the corpse? if we were talking about, was he a 13-year-old or was he not a 13-year-old? In other words, had he reached puberty or had he not reached puberty? Okay, then it makes sense that by digging up the corpse, you can tell, was this, was he prepubescent or was he a pubescent, young man who had already reached puberty? But the dispositive age for this is not 13. It's either 18 or 20. Are we really going to be able to tell the difference between a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old, or between a 19-year-old and a 20-year-old from digging up the corpse? Now, the reason why it actually becomes relevant is because we're going to be talking about the concept of a saris. Right? So we talked earlier in our journey through Daf Yomi about an alonis. That's a sexually underdeveloped woman, right? So a woman who doesn't, her body doesn't mature, even as she gets older, her 20s and 30s, her body sort of remains prepubescent and she's unable to bear children because of it. Now we're talking about the male equivalent of that. So this would be a male who, even though he ages and becomes, an adult, 21, 25, 30 years old, he doesn't develop pubic hair. He doesn't develop other signs of, a sexually mature male. So that's called a saris. So there, it might matter, right? So it might matter, was he a sexually immature male who's going to remain that way or not? You'll see how this comes into the discussion. That's called a saris. Okay. So they said that he was a minor at the time of his death, and therefore the sale was not valid. They came and asked Rabbi Akiva, what is the law? Is it permitted to exhume the corpse in order to examine it and ascertain whether or not the heir was a minor at the time of his death? And Rabbi Akiva said to them, it is not permitted for you to disgrace him for the sake of a monetary claim. You're not going to dig up a body. That's an affront, right? That's an affront to the corpse. And furthermore, signs indicating puberty are likely to change after death. So whether you find them or not doesn't prove what his status was physically at the time that he died. And therefore nothing can be proved by exhuming the bodies, right? So first, it's an affront to the body. And second, even if you did dig up the body, you wouldn't discover anything because the signs can change after death. So Rabbi Zera explains the objection. Now, from this, we're going to learn perhaps something about the age of when can somebody sell land. So Rabbi Zera explains, granted, according to the one who says that the heir can sell the property once he is 18 years old, now on page 155b, this is the reason that they came and said to Rabbi Akiva, what is the law? Is it permitted to examine the corpse? But if you say that he can sell the property from the time he is 20 years old, well then even if they examine him, what of it? But didn't we learn in the Mishna tractate Nida with regard to a 20-year-old man who did not develop two pubic hairs, right? He did not show the signs of puberty even at the age of 20. About him, proof must be brought that he is 20 years old. And if so, if we can prove that he's 20 years old and he still hasn't developed, hasn't had puberty, then he is no longer considered a minor, even though physically he's a minor. And what is this? What is the case of this person? He is the saris, translated here as the sexually underdeveloped man, right? So you kind of, even though he's reached an age when he should have hit puberty, he hasn't hit puberty. Well, by the time he reaches 20 years old, if he hasn't hit puberty by then we're going to say, okay, he is a saris, he is a sexually underdeveloped man, and we're going to call him an adult anyway, because now he's 20. Right? So since that's the cutoff for when you say, even though he physically hasn't hit puberty, we're nevertheless going to deem him an adult because that's the case of the saris. So then it would make sense about exhuming the body if the age of selling a property is 20. But if the age is 18, well, 18 has nothing to do with the age at which you would call him an adult anyway. So it must be that 20 is the age that we use for when somebody is considered mature enough to sell property that he inherited from his father. This is the proof that Rabbi Zera is making. And we learned in that tract in Nida about the saris, a little bit more information about a saris, that he is the saris who is excluded from the mitzvah of yibum, of levirate marriage. If he had a brother who died childless and he left a widow, then there's an obligation for the surviving brother to either marry the widow, and their first child will be the heir of the brother who died, or they perform chalitza, which releases her to go marry whoever she wants. But if the surviving brother is a saris, this sexually underdeveloped man, then he's excused from yibum. He can't perform yibum. She doesn't need chalitza in order to be released. It's as if there was no brother. With respect to the yibum obligation, she can go marry whoever she wants. Now, the Gemara replies, wasn't it stated with regard to that Mishnah that Rabbi Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak says that Rav says, and is the law only where he developed the signs of a sexually underdeveloped man, the signs of a saris? Otherwise, a 20-year-old who has not developed the signs of puberty, 2 pubic hairs, is still considered a minor. So the examination of the deceased could therefore be effective to see if he has other signs of being sexually underdeveloped. And Rava said the language of the Mishnah is also precise as it teaches, and he is the saris. So the usage of the saris, the usage of the definitive article the, indicates that the Mishnah is referring to one who is clearly a saris. And so, he's old enough that he should have developed puberty, but he didn't. So that makes him the saris. So the Gemara affirms one can conclude from the Mishnah that the Mishnah is speaking of one who developed the signs of a saris. So the Gemara asks, and if he did not develop the signs of a saris, until when is he considered a minor if he does not develop 2 pubic hairs? And Rabbi Chia teaches in a Baraisa, he is considered a minor he is considered a minor until most of his years have elapsed, i.e. until he is 35 years old. Since the average age is, the average lifespan is 70, right? We learned that elsewhere. I think in Psalm 90, right? That a man's years are 70, and if particularly strong, 80. Of course, we always pray for people that they should live to 120, but average is 70. So when have you completed most of your life? When you reach your 35th birthday, right? So they would say, what are they talking about? He is considered a minor, right? Because he hasn't developed puberty, but he's also not a saris. So for whatever reason, they're able to read who is a saris and who's not. And it's not only whether he has, these particular signs of puberty. There's other signs. We're not really doing any in-depth study right now of how to determine if one is a saris. So it's possible that somebody is not a saris, but also hasn't had puberty. And so when are you going to say that, okay, well, he's an adult? And what is that age? 35. So, no matter what the signs are, no matter what his physical development is, at the age of 35, he's considered an adult, right? Some would say that that's when the offspring is viable, when he graduates medical school. Forget it. Sorry, that's an old Jewish joke. Okay, so what is this about? Where am I? So Rabbi Chia teaches in a Baraisa, he is considered a minor until most of his years have elapsed, i.e. until he is 35 years old. When the case of one who had not developed these signs of puberty would come before Rabbi Chia, he would offer the following advice. If the person was thin, he would say to those appearing in court, cause him to become fat. And if he was fat, he would say to them, cause him to become thin. And this is because these signs indicating puberty sometimes develop due to excessive thinness, and sometimes they develop due to corpulence, right? So in other words, sometimes changing your body weight can trigger the body to finally enter puberty. Of course, these are rare cases, but it happens now and then. So a dilemma was raised before the sages. During the time, now we're getting back to just much more normal questions. At what age can a young man who inherited property from his father sell that property and the sale is a valid sale? So we're back to, is it when he's 18 or when he's 20? Those are the two choices. So dilemma was raised before the sages, and the answer, by the way, is 20. Okay, so we say that a young man is not mature enough to sell the property that inherited from his father, real property, land, until he's 20 years of age. During the time, i.e. the year when a minor comes of age with regard to selling his deceased father's property, Is this year considered as before the time that he comes of age, or is it considered as after the time? In other words, when you turn 20, is that when you can sell the property, or do you have to complete your 20th year, which is not until you become 21? Does one come of age at the beginning or the end of that year? So Rava says that Rav Nachman says during that time is considered as before that time. And he does not come of age until the year has elapsed, i.e. on the 21st birthday. Rava bar Rav Shela says that Rav Nachman says during that time is considered as after the time. And he is considered as having come of age during that year, meaning on his 20th birthday. So the Gemara notes, and this statement of Rava was not stated explicitly. Rather, it was stated by inference. We're back to that. As there was a certain person who, during the time, i.e. the year when one comes of age, and this person went and sold his father's property, and the case came before Rava. And Rava said to the litigants, he did not do anything, as the sale is not valid. He wasn't old enough. One who observed Rava's ruling assumed that he ruled in this manner because he maintained that during the time when he comes of age is considered as before the time, meaning he was in his 20th year. He had turned 20, but Rava held that he doesn't, he's not legally mature enough to sell that property until he has completed his 20th year, i.e. on his 21st birthday. So that's what they assumed, that's what Rava was holding. But that is not so. The reason that Rava ruled this way was that there, in this particular case, Rava observed excessive mental incompetence in the behavior of that individual. Why? Because he was emancipating his slaves. Since Rava saw that he was mentally incompetent, he invalidated the sale. It's very interesting. You might think, well, isn't that a sign of moral competence in the highest degree? We would say that because we live in modern times when, thank God, slavery has been eliminated. Except for there's illegal slavery in some places of the world, but it has been illegal throughout the world for so much time. But in the ancient world, when it was so common that, you had legal disputes involving slaves all the time, so somebody who just went and freed the slaves that he inherited from his father would be deemed a crazy person who was just sort of burning up property, throwing away important property that belonged to the estate of his family. That's what this one was doing. And so Rava said he's not mature enough to sell land, given this other behavior that he's been engaging in. New subject. Gidol bar Menashe sent an inquiry to Rava. Let our teacher instruct us with regard to a girl who is 14 years and 1 day old. What's the significance of 14? Nothing, actually, because girls are more mature earlier than boys. Right? So a boy becomes legally an adult in the sense of being obligated in the commandments when he turns 13. A girl becomes an adult and is legally obligated in the commandments when she turns 12. Does that mean she's an adult, for many other things that adults do? No. And as we've already seen, when it comes to buying and selling land, we have a different age requirement for that. But here we're saying there was an incident where he was asked about a girl who is 14 years and 1 day old and who understands the nature of business negotiations. She's 14 and she knows how to do business. So about her, what is the law? Can she sell property that she inherited from her father? Rava sent a reply to Gidol bar Menashe. If she understands the nature of business negotiations, her purchase is a valid purchase and her sale is a valid sale. What? If we say that a young man who inherits property from his father cannot sell it until he's 20, are we going to say that girls are so far ahead of boys in terms of the way they mature that her sale is a valid sale even when she's 14? Not so fast. With respect to boys and girls who are teenagers or legal adults but not old enough to sell land that they inherited from their father, they can sell movable property. That's where their sale is a valid sale. The Gemara asks, but Gidol could have sent this question to Rava with regard to a boy. Why did he not do so? And the Gemara answers, well, the incident that took place in this way. He happened to be talking about a girl who was mature and understood business and sold things when she was 14. So the Gemara asks, but he could have sent this question to Rava with regard to a girl who is 12 years and 1 day old, at which age a girl reaches her majority. Why did he not do so? And the Gemara answers, the incident that took place in this way. And the Gemara notes, and this statement of Rava was not stated explicitly, rather was stated by inference, as it was inferred from the following incident. There was a certain person who was under 20, but who understood business negotiations, who went and sold his father's property in accordance with the ruling that Rava sent to Gidel Bar Menashe. You said a girl who's 14 who understands business can sell property. Okay, here's a boy. He's under 20, but he understands business. So he sold some land. Is it valid? And the case came, and the case came before Rava. And the seller's relatives, who didn't want this boy to sell it, said to the one who sold the property, go eat dates and throw the pits into Rava's house. Get this picture, right? They're bringing this case to Rava, who's going to be the judge, and they're saying, okay, our relative, who let's say he's 17 years old, who understands business, but he sold land that belonged to that he inherited from his father, and he shouldn't have been allowed to do that because the law is land you can only sell when you're 20. Now, the buyers of the land are saying, well, what are you talking about? You gave this ruling that a girl who's 14 who understands business, she can sell property and it's a valid sale. This boy, let's say he's 17. Why shouldn't his sale be a valid sale? So Rava is going to answer the question. And just to make sure, but since they also heard that Rava will set aside a ruling if somebody just demonstrates that they're not mentally competent, so they told the boy, go eat dates, and the pits that you're going to not eat, throw them inside Rava's house. Okay? Why would they tell him to do that? Go eat dates and throw the pits into Rava's house. In order to prove to Rava that their relative was not mentally competent. And the boy did so, and Rava said to them, his sale is not a valid sale. Right? So the relatives understood the situation, and they sort of, was it a ruse, or was it that the boy really was immature, shouldn't have been selling his father's land, and this demonstrates how immature he was, that they were able to tell him, go eat dates and throw the pits in Rava's house, and he did so. When they were when they were writing for him a writ containing the decision, right? So Rava's scribe, I guess is the bailiff of the court, is writing up the decision from Rava. The buyers, right? Now the buyers are the one who are out of luck. They bought land from this boy, and now that sale is being set aside. So they want to contest the invalidation by Rava's court of the sale that they, felt was a perfectly fair and binding sale. So while they were waiting for him, while they were writing this writ containing the decision, the buyers said to the seller, right? So first his relatives said to the boy, go eat dates and throw the pits in Rava's house. Now the buyers said to this boy, in order to prove that he was mentally competent, go and say to Rava, the scroll of Esther, which is a large scroll, right? The Megillah that we read on Purim. The scroll of Esther is bought for a dinar. Why then does the short writ containing master's ruling also cost a dinar, which was the scribe's fee for writing up the writ at the court? And the boy went and said this to Rava. Rava said to them, oh, I see. He is mentally competent. His sale is a valid sale. The boy's relatives said to Rava, what are you talking about? The buyers just taught him to say that. And Rava said to them, even so, when they explained the matter to him, he understands what they're talking about. Since when they explain a matter to him, he understands, he knows what he is doing. And the reason that he acted in this manner, throwing the pits into my house, was because of excessive impudence that was in him, not mental incompetence. Yeah, he threw pits into my house. That's an annoying and crazy thing to do, but he did that because he's an arrogant young man, not because he's mentally incompetent, and therefore his sale is a valid sale. Still surprising because he was under 20. So maybe from that, at least from that incident, there was a ruling that you can sell when you're 18. But eventually the law got worked out to be 20. Right? Let me just double check. I read that. I'm pretty sure I read that. The age is 20. Wait. From when can a minor sell his deceased father's property? Oh, no. That was it. No. Okay. One cannot sell land inherited from one's father or from other relatives, or land received as the gift of a person on his deathbed until he is 20 years old and has developed signs of puberty. Right? That's why that whole thing about the saris was relevant. Until he is 20 years old and has developed signs of puberty. He cannot sell the property before this time, even if he has developed the signs of puberty, and even if he understands the nature of business negotiations, lest he sell the property for less than its value, as a child is by nature attracted to money and does not yet comprehend the ways of the world. Once he has reached this age, he can sell the property, even if he does not understand the nature of business negotiations, and this ruling is in accordance with the Gemara's conclusion when we finally get to it. Okay. Excessive impudence. Okay. Rav Huna, the son of Rav Yehoshua, says, and with regard to the testimony, right now we're talking about witness testimony, and with regard to the testimony of one who is not old enough to sell property that he inherits from his father, his testimony is valid testimony. And Mar Zutra said, we said that his testimony is valid only with regard to movable property, but not with regard to land. So very interesting. From when can somebody be a witness in court? We would think when he reaches majority, right? When he's obligated in the commandments. A boy who's 13 or a girl who's 12. Now we've learned that a boy who inherits land from his father cannot sell that land until he is 20. So are we going to say that he shouldn't be allowed to give testimony, eyewitness testimony in a court until he's 20? So one possible solution to this is, well, he can be younger than 20 and he can testify in a case that involves movable property, since after all, he can buy and sell movable property when he's younger than 20. But in a case where land is the matter that is being disputed, he cannot appear as a witness if he's less than 20, because he has to be 20 in order to buy and sell land, so he has to be 20 in order to testify about what somebody else buying or selling land, but he can be younger if it's about movable property. That's the first proposal to solving this question. Rav Ashi said to Mar Zutra, in what way is movable property different from land? It is different because with regard to movable property, his sale is a valid sale, right? As long as he is a legal adult, meaning he's 13, he can buy and sell movable property, and even land that he purchased. He can purchase land. What he can't sell is land that he inherited from his father. But if that is so, consider that which we learned in the Mishna, Tractate Gittin, page 59a, a purchase made by young children, not even 12 or 13. A purchase made by young children is a valid purchase, and a sale made by them is a valid sale. And these laws apply to transactions involving movable property. Is it possible that also in the case of young children, their testimony is valid testimony? No way, right? A 10-year-old cannot appear in a court as a witness. We do not accept testimony from people who are, not legally minors, right? Even less than that, again, a 10-year-old. So a 10-year-old can buy and sell things. They certainly can't sell land. They can't sell things that they've inherited, but they can go into a store and buy something. You're not going to say it wasn't a legal sale because it was a child. He can. But just the fact that he can buy and sell movable property does not mean that he can testify in a case about movable property, because a minor cannot testify in court. Isn't it an established law that minors are disqualified from bearing witness? And Mar Zutra said to Rav Ashi, there, with regard to testimony, I require the witnesses to be men. As the verse states in Deuteronomy 19:17, then the two men shall stand, which is interpreted as referring to witnesses, and this requirement is not fulfilled in the case of young children. In other words, we don't tie whether somebody is capable of giving testimony about movable property to whether they're able to buy and sell movable property, because when it comes to giving testimony, we have a separate requirement that it be an adult. A Maymar, and I'm almost done. Questions or comments, please get them in now. A Maymar says, with regard to one who is not old enough to sell property that he inherits from his father, if he gave a gift from the property, his gift is a valid gift. He can't sell it, but he can gift it. Rav Ashi said to a Maymar, now, if with regard to a sale in which at least he receives money, and yet you say that the sage has instituted an ordinance that he is not authorized to sell, lest he reduce the price of the property and deplete his father's estate, Kal v'chomer, all the more so. In the case of a gift, he is not authorized to give a gift, as nothing at all comes into his possession in exchange. Maymar said to Rav Ashi, and now we're at the top of page 156a, and according to your reasoning that the money he receives in exchange for the property is a reason one could consider his sale valid, if he sold property worth 5 dinars for 6 dinars, would his sale also be a valid sale? No, because it's not about how much money he got. We just said already, because there's a risk that he'll sell for the wrong price, that we don't allow him to sell property that he inherited, land that he inherited before his 20th birthday. So it really has nothing to do with the purchase price. But that's in terms of sale. What about gift? Rather, the sages maintain that a child's inclination is to be attracted to money. And if you say that his sale is a valid sale, there may be times that there are potential buyers who rattle the dinars before him in order to tempt him to sell, and he will go and sell all his father's property for a totally inadequate price. And that is why the sages rule that all of his sales are not valid. But with regard to a gift, if he did not derive benefit from the recipient, he would not give him a gift. So the sages therefore said, let the gift of an orphan be a valid gift, so that people will perform beneficial matters for the orphans, as the orphan can reciprocate by giving gifts. And therefore, the gift of, I suppose, one who is an illegal adult, right, so over 13, but not yet old enough to sell, land that he inherited, if he gifts it, that gift is a valid gift. Though, please God, we hope he would consult with somebody before doing something so drastic. And that concludes our learning for today. We'll pick this up tomorrow at 156a. We're going to have a nice short dot because the new Friday time in the winter is 11:30 a.m. Pacific. So half an hour earlier than our usual Friday time, which is noon Pacific. And I'll keep it to no more than half an hour. And this will help people on the East Coast be ready for Shabbos, which comes in so early this time of year. Okay, it looks like I only have one question from Yosef. Young, impressionable people who look up to authority will do what they tell them. Would this young man really be held to being steered wrong? I mean, we're doing everything we can to protect. You're talking about in that case where they told him to, throw the pits into Rava's house, or to repeat, this erudite comparison between a Megillah and the writ being issued by the court. And that's exactly the point. We have to, take the totality of circumstances into it. I think what happened with Rava was he saw the boy acting weird and he said, oh, maybe he really is not competent. Then they told him to say something. What really happened is that prompted Rava to have a conversation with him. And when he had a conversation with the boy, you could see, he has perfectly good understanding. And therefore the sale was a valid sale. I think, what were we talking about there? Was that movable property before he was 20, or even land after he's 20 if he's not competent? Again, so many of these cases, there's more evidence than we're just talking about here. And so all this conflicts, so many of these conflicts would be avoided if the parties were very clear at the time of buying and selling. But in the real world, people very often buy and sell without discussing all the terms or hiring lawyers and drafting all the terms into a contract. Disputes arise, and then we see what assumptions we make and what are the governing laws and principles. That's what I've got for us today, and with God's help, see you tomorrow, Friday, 11:30 a.m. Pacific. And for those celebrating Thanksgiving, happy Thanksgiving. All the best.